When most people think of ancient Greece, they likely recall its philosophy and rationalism epitomized by eminent figures like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and the Stoics. These names are synonymous with the legacy of ancient Greece, but this view is often incomplete. Ancient Greece and these philosophers are frequently seen as epitomes of a pure, rationalistic or scientific era, a precursor to our modern enlightened age, supposedly disrupted by the rise of religion and superstition until the Renaissance or Enlightenment. However, this portrayal of history is grossly incorrect and oversimplified for various reasons. The ancient Greeks, contrary to popular belief based on this narrative, were not solely rationalistic. While it's true that philosophers like Plato emphasized reason and argument in their philosophical pursuits, this doesn't fully capture the essence of their work. Many of these philosophers were also deeply engaged in what we would now term religious practices or mysticism, often viewing these as superior paths to truth beyond the confines of human reason and intellect. Ancient Greece was rife with what might be termed mystical practices and experiences, aspects that have been largely overlooked or ignored by historians, particularly in earlier historical studies. This oversight is partly because such mystical elements don't fit neatly into the narrative of the ancient Greeks as our rational and intellectual forebears. The way we discuss this topic reveals more about our own self-perception than it does about the actual individuals we aim to depict. In this episode, we will delve into this often neglected facet of ancient Greek culture, exploring what we might broadly describe as mysticism or mystical experiences in ancient Hellenic society. In tackling the expansive subject of mysticism in the ancient world, it's necessary to narrow our focus to specific expressions of what is commonly referred to as mysticism. This term itself is contentious and even more so when applied outside of a Christian or Abrahamic context. Fortunately, the words mysticism, mystic, and mystical have their roots in Greek, deriving from muein, meaning to conceal, and meistes, referring to an initiate. However, the contemporary meaning of mysticism wasn't fully established until the works of the Christian theologian Pseudo-Dionysius, and it gained further prominence during the 16th and 17th centuries. Adhering to our previously discussed working definition, mysticism or mystical experiences can be understood as those involving direct encounters with the divine, often accompanied by altered states of consciousness. Under this definition, we can uncover a rich tapestry of mystical experiences throughout ancient Greece. Despite the prevalent yet inaccurate portrayal of ancient Greece as predominantly rational, even among academics and historians, there has been a shift towards acknowledging its irrational aspects. One notable scholar in this field is E.R. Dodds, whose seminal work, The Greeks and the Irrational, argues for the importance of these often overlooked aspects of Greek culture. This includes the prophetic role of oracles like the renowned Oracle of Delphi, who communicated divine messages through ecstatic states of consciousness. Additionally, the influence of the Muses on poets and artists, as described by Plato, is a prime example. Plato's concept of poetic mania suggests that true artistic creation transcends mere human imagination, being instead a product of divine madness bestowed by the Muses. Let's start our exploration with one of the most intriguing aspects of ancient Hellenic culture, religion and the so-called mysticism of mystery cults. These cults encompassed various movements, each offering initiates secret knowledge or wisdom. Prominent among these were the Eleusinian mysteries, the Bacchic cults of Dionysus, and the Orphic traditions. Some argue that early paganism itself resembled a mystery cult. The Eleusinian mysteries in particular stood out as the most famous and widely participated mystery cult of ancient times, with a significant portion of Athenian citizens being initiates. The Eleusinian mysteries were an annual initiation ceremony held in Eleusis near Athens. During the event, large groups would journey from Athens to Eleusis, engaging in fasting, drinking a special beverage called the kykeon, and participating in secret rituals within the telesterion. The exact nature of these rituals remains largely unknown, as participants were sworn to secrecy. However, it's understood that they centered around the myth of Demeter and Persephone, also known as Kore, particularly the story of Persephone's abduction by Hades and Demeter's subsequent distress and search for her daughter. These mysteries involved intense experiences that often led to altered states of consciousness, simulating Persephone's descent into the underworld. Initiates reportedly underwent profound transformations, with many claiming a loss of fear of death. The rituals led by priests were designed to induce these altered states, potentially revealing divine truths or deeper realities. Greek terms like mania and bakchia describe these ecstatic transformations, which had lasting impacts on the initiates' lives. Julia Asayeva, a scholar on the subject, notes that mystery rites were meant to be unsettling and disturbing, leading to a profound change in the initiate's outlook on life. After experiencing a simulated death, initiates would ideally reach a state of ecstasy, feeling immortal and united with the divine. The Telesterian rituals also included music and ecstatic dancing to facilitate these altered states. Contrary to being a fringe practice, these mystery cults were a significant part of life in ancient Greece, especially around Athens. Many philosophers, typically associated with rationalism, were themselves initiates of the Eleusinian mysteries. For instance, the Platonic philosopher Plutarch describes the ritual as a journey through darkness and terror, culminating in marvelous light, sacred visions, and a sense of liberation. Once initiated, a person became a mystes, a Greek term for initiate, which is the root of mystic. However, categorizing these varied cults under one umbrella is somewhat problematic, as each had distinct characteristics. The Eleusinian mysteries were more of an annual event, while other cults, like those of Pythagoras and the Pythagoreans, resembled what we might today consider a cult, with ongoing group practices and beliefs. Pythagoras serves as another notable example of the kind of movement we're discussing. While I won't delve deeply into Pythagoreanism here, it's important to address some common misconceptions about Pythagoras. Contrary to popular belief, Pythagoras, if he indeed existed as a historical figure, was not primarily known for his mathematical contributions. Instead, he was more of a mystical sage who founded an initiatory movement focused on ritualistic rules and practices. These included strict vegetarianism, an aversion to beans, and various other unique practices. While it's challenging to pinpoint specific rituals involving altered states of consciousness within Pythagoreanism, this movement shared several characteristics with other mystery cults. These similarities include a focus on the soul and the afterlife, and it's plausible that they engaged in practices akin to those found in other groups. Understanding Pythagoreanism is crucial for a comprehensive grasp of the ancient Hellenic world, as it highlights some prevalent misconceptions about the era. Pythagoras is often seen as a pioneering mathematician, credited with the Pythagorean theorem taught in schools and viewed as a rational philosopher. However, this image is somewhat misleading. While later Pythagoreans like Philolaus did delve into mathematics as a means to understand the universe, there's no concrete evidence that Pythagoras himself was directly involved in mathematical studies. The teachings of his group, shrouded in secrecy, remain largely unknown. Early sources paint Pythagoras as a sage-like figure, capable of miraculous feats and almost demigod-like in nature. He established a group that many would liken to a mystery cult, similar in some respects to the Orphic traditions. The Pythagoreans were primarily focused on ritualistic conduct and specific lifestyle rules, contrasting sharply with the common portrayal of Pythagoras as a rational mathematician. These early accounts do not support the latter image, suggesting a more complex and mystical character at the heart of Pythagoreanism. The Bacchic Dionysian mysteries, centered around the god Dionysus, were among the most significant mystery cults in ancient times. Dionysus, associated with wine, fertility, and notably mania or madness and religious ecstasy, was also known as Bacchus, reflecting his ability to induce a state of madness known as Bacchia. The Bacchic cult, dedicated to Dionysus, was characterized by its practitioners entering intense altered states of consciousness and ecstasy, often feeling united with or possessed by the god. The Bacchic mysteries are typically divided into two main types: a spontaneous, frenzied, non-organized cult, predominantly involving women, and a more structured, initiatory group within urban settings. Both, however, shared key features. In the former, women known as manads would engage in rituals to reach ecstatic states. This cult was almost exclusively female, with participants leaving their homes to perform rituals in the wilderness, involving music, dance, and possibly intoxicants to induce madness and ecstasy, or bakcheia. These maenads, often depicted in a frenzied state on ceramic vases and artworks, would wear animal skins and roam the countryside, with some dramatic accounts suggesting they even committed acts of violence. This practice of inducing ecstasy and altered states of consciousness is a recurring theme in various religious traditions. In the state of bakcheia, individuals would lose their regular sense of self, being overtaken by Dionysus and his ecstatic madness. This experience of dying to oneself and uniting with higher realities is a sought-after state among mystics throughout history. There were also likely psychological and sociological factors at play, particularly for women in ancient Greece. In cities like Athens, women's movements and powers were severely restricted, confined mostly to the home and under male control. Participating in these ecstatic rituals offered a form of psychological release from the constraints of everyday life. The maenads present a compelling case of what some might define as a form of mysticism. Additionally, there was a more organized initiatory aspect of the Dionysian cult, especially in urban areas. This cult, popular among both men and women, mainstreamed the use of altered states of consciousness and ecstasy induced through music and dance as a means of initiation. Through this Bacchic ecstasy, initiates were believed to unite with the divine and gain mystical knowledge, leading to an enlightened life and a more favorable afterlife, a common theme across various mystery cults. The Dionysian cult, therefore, represents a significant and complex aspect of ancient religious practice. The Orphic mysteries associated with the mythical figure Orpheus represent another complex aspect of ancient mystery cults. Scholars have long debated the existence of Orphism as a distinct group, with some viewing it as a historical construct rather than a coherent tradition. Orphism is typically linked to practices and beliefs attributed to Orpheus, a legendary poet and musician credited with various myths, hymns, and writings that have esoteric and mystical interpretations. Orpheus is particularly noted for his journey to the underworld, a theme common in many mystery cults and myths about the gods. Orpheus is often seen as the progenitor of mystery rituals and practices, leading many to believe in a distinct Orphic mystery cult, possibly related to the Pythagoreans and Bacchic cults. Similarities in practices, such as vegetarianism and specific ritual prohibitions, are evident among these groups. The ancient historian Herodotus even linked the Orphics, Bacchic cults, and Pythagoreans, suggesting an Egyptian origin, although such claims should be approached with caution due to the prevalence of Orientalism in ancient times. Orphism's focus on the afterlife, including instructions for navigating it, bears resemblance to Egyptian traditions like the Book of the Dead. However, the coherence of Orphism as a distinct tradition remains unclear. It's possible that Orpheus, as a symbol of mystery and rites, was used by various cults like the Bacchic or Pythagorean groups to legitimize their practices, rather than representing a separate group known as the Orphics. If we consider the existence of an Orphic mystery cult, its rituals might have involved symbolic descents into the underworld, or katabasis. This practice, common in ancient Greece, involved seeking wisdom through extended stays in dark caves, possibly facilitated by intoxicants or substances, leading to altered states of consciousness and higher knowledge. The recurring theme of katabasis in mystery cults is significant. Orpheus, Dionysus, and the myth of Persephone's abduction by Hades all involve journeys to the underworld, reflecting a common motif in these traditions. These cults also shared a focus on securing a pleasant afterlife for initiates, a concept that diverges from the general ancient Greek belief of a uniform afterlife in Hades. While some have speculated on connections between these mystery cults and later Abrahamic religions, particularly Christianity, these remain conjectures. However, the influence of such mystery cults on later religious ideas is an intriguing consideration. While these cults are often seen as distinct traditions, some suggest they might represent different facets of a broader ancient Greek mystery religion. This exploration helps us appreciate the mystical elements that were a prominent feature of culture and religion in the ancient Hellenic world. Moving on to more intellectual aspects. Parmenides, often regarded as the first metaphysician or the pioneer of ontology in philosophy, presents a fascinating blend of mysticism and rationalism. In his renowned philosophical poem On Nature, Parmenides introduces a startling monistic concept, the idea that everything is one, that being is singular and unchanging. The question arises, how did he arrive at such a profound conclusion about the nature of reality? Was it solely through philosophical reasoning? Interestingly, Parmenides' work begins with an account of a mystical journey, arguably another instance of katabasis, or descent into the underworld. He describes being transported in a chariot led by mares, accompanied by the daughters of the sun, moving from the house of night to the light, traversing a vast abyss and finally being enlightened by an unnamed goddess about the secrets of reality. While some might interpret this as mere poetic embellishment, it seems more plausible that Parmenides is recounting a genuine mystical experience that provided him with profound insights into the nature of reality. Parmenides' radical monism, the belief in an undivided whole where reality is one and immutable, challenges the conventional perception of a reality filled with change and multiplicity. He suggests that our senses and minds deceive us, but through mystical insight he has accessed a deeper truth, which he articulates in his influential work. This interpretation places mysticism at the heart of his philosophy, a perspective that significantly influenced later philosophers like Plato and Aristotle. While some may still view the opening of Parmenides' treatise as purely metaphorical, considering it a poetic device rather than a literal account, it's important not to dismiss the profound implications of this narrative. The imagery he uses, reminiscent of mystery cults and the theme of descent into the underworld, suggests a deeper connection to mystical experiences or altered states of consciousness. This aspect of Parmenides' work, often overlooked, highlights the intersection of mysticism and philosophy in ancient Greece, revealing a more nuanced understanding of these early thinkers. Later philosophers also grappled with these themes, further illustrating the intricate relationship between mysticism and rational thought in the ancient world. Plato's work, often associated with mysticism, provides a unique blend of rational philosophy and mystical elements. While Neoplatonists like Plotinus, who lived centuries later, are more explicitly linked to mysticism, traces of it can also be found in Plato's own dialogues. Rather than projecting later Neoplatonic ideas onto Plato, it's insightful to explore the mystical aspects inherent in his original texts. Plato's dialogues hint at a form of mysticism that complements rational thought. He suggests that beyond reason and argument, there exists a higher source of knowledge, mania or divine madness, through which wisdom is directly received from the divine. Plato is also known for his esoteric or unwritten doctrines, referenced by Aristotle and crucial for Neoplatonists' interpretations. In his seventh letter, considered authentic by most scholars, Plato hints at teachings that are ineffable, not expressible in words. He describes a sudden illumination, akin to a light flashing forth born in the soul, a language that resonates with mystical experiences. In dialogues like the Phaedo, which portrays Socrates' final moments, Plato delves into the nature of the philosophic life, suggesting a turning away from the body and senses, allowing the soul to ascend to higher realities. This ascetic and spiritual discipline hints at uniting with divine realities, possibly the Platonic forms. The theme of mystical illumination becomes clearer in the Phaedrus and the Symposium. In the Symposium, Alcibiades compares Socrates' philosophic wisdom to Bacchic frenzy or mania. The Phaedrus celebrates divine mania, categorizing it into prophetic, Bacchic, poetic and erotic mania, with the latter being the most exalted. Socrates describes how the soul, enraptured by beauty, grows wings and experiences divine madness, leading to contemplation of higher realities. Plato's portrayal of knowledge acquisition is not just through logical deduction, but also through a mystical process of recollection and divine inspiration. This knowledge is akin to a revelation or illumination, where the soul recollects true realities known before incarnation and unites with divine realities. In the Republic, Plato suggests that knowledge of true reality comes from the soul's kinship with it, implying a mystical union. This idea, read through a Neoplatonic lens, suggests a unio mystica, the soul's union with higher realities. While some scholars debate the presence of mysticism in Plato's work, the dialogues often point to the idea that the highest wisdom is achieved through divine madness, checked by reason. This combination of divine mania and logical reasoning characterizes the true philosopher in Plato's view. In summary, Plato's philosophy, while rooted in rational thought, also encompasses mystical elements, suggesting a complex interplay between reason and mystical experiences in the pursuit of truth and wisdom. The common portrayal of the ancient Hellenic world as a culture steeped solely in rationalism devoid of any mystical elements is a misconception. A deeper exploration reveals a rich tapestry of mystical practices and ideas, ranging from popular religious cults to the philosophies of well-known figures traditionally viewed as paragons of rationalism and science. However, as we've seen, there's another dimension to their lives and works, often overlooked or dismissed, yet integral to understanding their contributions. This overview, while general, has highlighted examples of what might be termed mysticism or altered states of consciousness as pathways to wisdom in ancient Greece. The term mysticism itself is complex and not without its problems, especially in this historical context. However, using our working definition and acknowledging these complexities, we can appreciate the multifaceted nature of ancient Greek thought. I hope this video has been educational and engaging, offering a fresh perspective on the concept of mysticism in ancient Greece. Stay tuned for more videos on similar topics, and I look forward to seeing you in future discussions.